Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wrong to Strong Chicago. My name is Omar Calvillo, and today I have my brother Jimmy Soto joining us here. Jimmy Soto, along with his cousin David, were recently exonerated after serving over 42 years in prison. I believe they got released on December 14th, 2023. So we're just fresh, out of prison. So I'm excited that he's here to join us. I know this conversation is gonna bless many, So welcome to the podcast, Jimmy.
Well, I appreciate you having me here, and I'm so happy to be here. So I hope that my story can be heard and maybe touch a few people and get them to understand some of the harms that come with that. But there's blessings that are hidden within there too.
Okay, yeah. Definitely, we want to touch into all that. There's always like a flip side to everything, right?
That's absolutely true.
With the good and the bad. But man, if you want, let's start at the beginning. That's usually how we like to start here. Start at the beginning where you grew up. So if you want to tell the people that there's a lot of people that listen to this that are not from Chicago. So maybe you could paint a picture of the community you grew up in. How was life growing up for you when you were young?
All right. Well, I grew up on the far south side of Chicago in an area called Pullman. It's between 95th Street and 99th and Stony Island and Cottage Grove. The area used to have a lot of families that used to they work in the steel mills. And so as we have deindustrialization happening in America, it affected the steel mills. As they began to close down, you see a lot of the white families. So when I moved there, it was predominantly white. And within only, I would say, a 4 or 5 year span, you see the white flight in full effect, and now you have a lot of black families moving in there. And it was a nice area. There was homes, there was grass, and all the places. Very kid friendly. There was a lot of parks, and Schmidt, Gately Park, etc. We would spend a lot of time there. So, those were the years that really made me who I am. Growing up among a lot of black kids. I had a fondness for R&B music, the dance, the dress, the polyester, etc. But that was the area I grew up, in the late 60s and 70s in that area. And that really made me who I am. I would play baseball there, Little League, the Avalon Cubs. I remember that in the Pee Wee League as well. And, that got me to be a Cub fan. And I'm a lifelong Cub fan. I'm a Southside boy that grew up over there. But eventually I'm in my freshman year, and we moved to Brighton Park, which is on the southwest side of Chicago, near Kedzie and 38 Pershing Road, around there. It extends further than that, but that's around the area that we moved to. And
what year was that?
That would have been like 1977, 78, And when I moved there, the area was predominantly white. And so here it is, a bit of a culture shock for me, where I'm coming from a predominantly black area to now a predominantly white area. I went to a school called Quigley South, which is located on 79th and Western, and in Chicago. It was a preparatory and a seminary school. So you had to have an inkling. I remember going to the Monsignor and asking him for a letter of recommendation, and him giving me probably an hour and a half, discussion about the seriousness of, undertaking, not a vow, but to say you have a desire or a calling. He said, "Did you get the calling?" I said, "No, I didn't get the calling." He said, "Well, I'm going to sign this, and I hope and pray that you get a calling." Unfortunately, I never got the calling, but that's the school I went to. And like I said, this is now I'm in my adolescent years.
Like, how old are you when you're seeking this?
Oh, this is when you're 14 years old. I mean, come on. Your brain's not fully developed when you're that young.
Yeah.
You really don't know what you want. My brother was already attending that high school. My cousin was there. So I just went there because they went there, to be honest. And, I didn't know I had to go through the screening. But, I went there, and it was a very good education that you received there. Like I said, by your sophomore year, they're already starting to tell you to do your SAT studies, because they want you to succeed and go on to college if that's the choice that you want to do. On the flip side, there was a lot of you had to take a lot of theology. You had to take a lot of that, and because it was a preparatory school, you got the academic part, but because they wanted it to be a seminary school, you also got that part as part of your education. So I'll be honest with you, at that time, I wasn't really, it was just perfunctory. I was just going through the motions when I was reading parts of scripture or reading some of the great writers, as they say, of the Catholic Church, which is, St. Thomas Aquinas, etc. So I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, it's not resonating with me. But anyway.
You know, okay, could I ask you something? Like, okay, you're already a teenager. Like, as a kid, I guess, what led to you wanting to do that as a teenager? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was faith big in your family, like growing up?
Faith definitely was big. I was born and raised a Catholic. I took, the sacraments of baptism, communion, confirmation. Yeah, I remember they would do the monthly, I think it's in May, you would do the homage to the Virgin Mary. Of course, because we were Mexican, we also did a homage to the Virgen de Guadalupe. So there's a lot of that was very, very much a part of my life. And we would attend church Sunday. That was a requirement that my father had, that if you were under his roof, you're going there. And I remember, as I was growing up, you're experimenting with drinking, etc. You might smoke a little weed. And so you didn't want to wake up on a Sunday morning to go to Catholic Mass, but, I had to. And
like, could I ask you, how were things at home growing up, like at early age or even up to a teenager?
I think that I was fortunate enough to have a two-parent family, my mother and father. I have 3 sisters and 1 brother. So it was a really, really close family. They always provided, even if they had to sacrifice for us, like I said, to give us a good education. All of us went to Catholic schools, so it wasn't free. We didn't get the free ride because both parents were working. They were just above that income line where they had to pay, as opposed to getting some type of financial aid. So, I know it was a struggle for them, and I wanted to succeed and do the best I could at school. But when you're a young Latino growing up in Chicago, there's a lot of things that you have to deal with. And okay, I want to get back to, me in Brighton Park. And so I'm in Brighton Park, and I'm there was these, I'm not going to say they were a gang, but there was groups of white guys that would be there. They call themselves heads or freaks. And I remember having trouble with them, having to fight with a couple of them, just because I was simply a Latino that didn't look like them, didn't dress like them, wasn't into the rock and roll music that they were in. And I remember that. But I was glad when I moved to Brighton Park because, as you mentioned, David and I were recently exonerated after serving 42 years in the IDOC for 2 murders and attempt murder, which we did not commit. And so David and I were like, we're more like brothers than we are cousins. We grew up together, family functions. And as I mentioned, family was a really big thing within both of our families. So we would have birthdays like baptisms, Christmas, Easter, you name it, 4th of July, Labor Day, barbecues, picnics. We would enjoy that a lot. But in addition, when summertime came, I would oftentimes spend, months at a time at David and my uncle's house. They used to live on 23rd and Spalding, I remember, at first. And then they would later move to the other side of Little Village. But to me, it really, was heartwarming to go to an area where I could see people that looked like me, that had the same culture. And of course, at home, my father loved to listen to, his Mexican music, and so, you grew up loving that just as much as I did R&B. So, it was really, really, like I said, we were all close. David's brothers and me. I would be there so much. I was like the other kid within that family. But as things would happen, and unfortunately in 1979, David's brother, Alfonso III, was violently killed by gunfire. And it really hit me hard, the fact that, my cousin, my other brother, was killed in that way. And, I got more drawn into the gang culture because of it, in a sick or perverted sense of wanting to do something. And I'll freely admit, it was like I wanted payback. I wanted, what could I do? Vengeance. And I'm joining. I want to be more of a gang member in honor of him. But I was never that hardcore gang member. I was more of a fringer. I was an outlier. I was not the person that was hanging on the block. I always maintained jobs. I had jobs at the Oriental Theater as an usher and a concession worker. I worked at a 1-800 exchange number where you would see those advertisements on late night TV about buying albums or these little gadgets, and you call up and we would take these orders. And then finally, as I got older, I was working at UPS before I got locked up, and so I didn't really have time to be in the hood all that time, nor did I live over there. So I had to eventually I get a car and all that, but yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time with my cousins, but that was in '79, and I'll move it up a bit. In 1981, in January, I'm sorry, my uncle, David's father, was also violently killed in a bar in a little village. And, that was tough to swallow too, to know that my uncle was, killed in that fashion. So there's all this going on. And, David now is living at home by himself in Westchester. And eventually in May of that year, in 1981, I wound up staying there full time. I now resided with David over there, but I would from January up to that point, I would be there like on the weekends. I would be, there partying, but I finally got a room there that I actually said I was living there. So we're living there and we're having a great time. Here we are, young guys.
How old are you?
I'm 18.
Okay.
I mean, he's 18. David's 18. I'm 20. And, now I'm not under my father's roof. I'm not going to church. I'm hanging out with him. Not that we were doing anything that was that wrong, but you figure, David had some money from a life insurance policy. He had some cars and things left. Of course, the home, had a built-in swimming pool. And so we're living a pretty good lifestyle for that age. So you can invite some, young women over. We're very sexually motivated. So we're just, doing things that, we think that's normal in a sense that young guys would want to do, you know. But it caught the eye of law enforcement, particularly on David. They began to target him in terms of, they started to think he's doing all sorts of illegal activities to get money. They're never really looking to see that, this money was left over, like I mentioned to you about, insurance policy and et cetera. So as they target him, there's a shooting that occurs in that summer, and that was been August 16th, 1981. 2 people were killed in Keeler, which was Petrosky Park. Those of you that know Chicago, the name was changed. And like I said, a young 16-year-old girl and an 18-year-old who was home on leave from the Marine Corps were killed and gunned down on a Sunday night. And a third person who they alleged to be a gang member was severely injured as well. And so I think I learned about that happened. I was with my girlfriend and the 10 o'clock news came on, and I saw that, it happened. I never really gave it too much thought, other than saying, that's messed up. Yeah. I knew it happened in a neighborhood that, quote unquote, was an area where the gang that I belonged to was located. But I didn't think, anything more of it. I didn't know the circumstances. Nobody was talking in terms of saying who did it. So I left it at that. It didn't bother me. It wasn't my business. So I didn't make it my business to find out who or what occurred. Right. Yeah. So we don't, the streets, they either talk or they don't talk. And there's really a lot of gossip, a lot of, misinformation about people wondering what happened and who did it. At some point, I guess the gang crime investigators thought it had to be gang related. And they start to amass this story that they think that, this gang that we were a part of had to have something to do with it because it was the area. And so they start picking up people here and there, which led up to October 15th, where they issue approximately 25 warrants, and they start rounding up people who they think are known members of this particular gang. And I want to point out that the majority of them were 16 and 15-year-olds. So probably 5 of us are over the age of 17. So just imagine all these young people held in custody for 2-3 days, being abused psychologically and physically by the CPD. They said whatever they wanted to say. They also give one individual in particular to become what they said, quote unquote, an accomplice witness, someone who said he conspired with us to plan this attack at the park, which resulted in 2 innocent lives being lost. And when they finally take me into custody, and I get to the police station, and I'm sitting in the interview room, 2 detectives come in. One looks like he's mad, saying, "I'm going down." The other one's like, "Listen, you need to tell us something right now to help yourself." And I said, "Tell you what?" He said, "Well, you're not, you know what you're here for." And honestly, I didn't think I was locked up for that particular shooting because I know I didn't do it. So when he tells me you're locked up for the park shootings, I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, we already know what happened." So me being a smart ass, I tell him, "Well, if you know what happened, what's up? Why are you asking me?" And he's like, "Well, no, we know what happened. You were there, And I said, "Well, I know I wasn't there." And I remember the cop, the mean cop, was this white guy, kind of burly. He puts his forearm against my neck and tells me that, "Oh, you're going to tell me what the hell going on, tough guy, And the other guy's like, "Back up, his attorney's coming." So I think my attorney, if they weren't notified that my attorney was coming, I think they would have worked me over. And who knows, I might have made a statement myself, but that didn't happen. But they tell me that they have, statements from other individuals that are saying that this shooting was premeditated. And I'm like, what? This can't be true. I'm thinking to myself, oh, no, But eventually, me and Dave wind up in the bullpen at Harrison and Kedzie on the west side of Chicago. And we're like, damn, this is messed up, And Dave's like, "No, the lawyer knows what's up. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Well, we got to start worrying about it." So we get processed to the county jail. We do see the lawyer that night. He just simply says, "Don't talk to the cops." All right. Well, we knew that, and then we didn't. We didn't talk to the cops. So I'm in the county jail, and I just can't believe it. I can't believe that I'm locked up with no bond for an offense that I know I didn't do. And so one of the first things I remember doing my first night in the county jail is I didn't get on my knees. I didn't pray to God in that sense. But I'm laying in my bunk and I'm thinking, God, what's going on? Why is this happening to me? So I started to wonder, you start to, there's a saying I heard a long time ago that they said there's no atheists in foxholes. And,
foxhole prayers.
Yeah. So when you're in dire straits, we have a tendency to look to a God, a higher force, etc. So, I'm like, just get me out of this. I don't say like, get me out of this and I'll follow you or this, that, and the other. I just simply say, God, help me get out of here. Just get me out of here. I didn't do it.
Right.
Just a one-on-one talking to him. And, that didn't happen. I guess he had another plan. Oftentimes we don't see it, the forest for the trees, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I'm in a county jail, and it wasn't easy. The county jail was really, really violent. The whole entire IDOC, both at the Cook County and in the IDOC, was very, very violent in the 80s, et cetera. And so you had to fight, So there's fights going on. We had to deal with the court system. We're going to court, and I'm wondering what's going on. And as my lawyer now gets what's called discovery, that's when the prosecutor got to disclose or give to the defense some of the information or material that they have that they're going to prosecute you before trial. So my attorney tells me, well, we got like at least a dozen or more people that made statements on you. I'm like, what? About what? He says that, you all conspired to do this act. And you have 2 women who say that they made a phone call to David prior to the shooting to inform him that there was a group in the park, a rival group, And then they say that they also have an accomplice witness, someone who now is their main witness, who's saying that I was involved, that I got out of a van, walked down the gangway with another individual, and that we opened fired, and that two people got killed and another got was attempted murder.
So they're saying that you actually were one of the shooters?
They're saying I was the second shooter, that I had a handgun. He said it wasn't clear according to the guy's testimony nor the state's information that they gave him, the material, written material, what I exactly had done. Had I shot somebody? That's what I mean. They say I'm firing the gun, but there's he says, but the good thing is there's no eyewitnesses to identify you. And I said, well, okay. Conceptually, I understood that, okay, you don't have any of that. I said, well, what else do they have?
Right.
He said, they have nothing else. And he's like, don't worry about it. That would be a consistent theme from my attorney. Don't worry about it. You know, you're gonna win. You're gonna beat this case. You're gonna get out. And he was a paid attorney, and I believed him. I believed him in the sense that he's a professional. He knows what he's doing. He's being paid. I don't think he's gonna lie to me. So yeah, when he finally told me some of the names, I was really, really upset. And, as one could imagine, I'm a young, immature individual. I'm in jail for something I didn't do. And then I have some individuals who made statements who I thought were, some of the young homies.
Yeah.
It just really didn't sit well with me. So my natural response was that they were, chumps. They were punks or snitches. And, anyone who's accused of that, they're not going to want to mess with you. You need those people, but you don't see it at the time. You just think, you did this to me. Why? I couldn't figure out why, So, I had this natural animosity towards them.
Right.
And, later on, as I got older and did my studies and realized that they were victimized. The system victimizes all of us. And I had to really do a lot of deep introspection to say, if that was me, a 15-year-old, under those, because they didn't let some of them use the washroom. They peed on themselves. They were either physically or psychologically abusing them. What I mean by psychologically, leaving them in a lit room, no sleep, giving them no food, sometimes no water, how would it broke? Studies have shown that when law enforcement use these techniques, a grown man will tell on himself that didn't do an offense. These are tried and proven techniques that law enforcement do. And so when I started to see that, I realized that, these people were really, hadn't really done anything purposely to harm me or David, that they were victims, as I said, of the system that just wanted to see a case solved and just put the accused A into a box and then get result B. So if we can just put this, anyone, you could have been anyone. I could have put anyone in this place and they would be the one that would have served maybe 42 years. But yeah, a lot of my mindset changed. I will say this, it was difficult when I was found guilty and the foreman stood up and they read the verdict and they want you to stand up in the courtroom as they read the verdict and say that you're guilty. The jury had been deliberating about 9.5 hours for a period of 2 days, and they came back with a note after 9+ hours telling the judge that they were struggling and that they couldn't come to a unanimous decision on the verdicts against David and I. But eventually they came back probably within 20 minutes and said guilty of all charges. And I just couldn't believe it, And the first thing I remember telling my lawyer was, you told me I'm going to beat it. I'm going to go home. What happened? Oh, don't worry about the appeal. I'm pissed off at him. I was mad. I was so mad. Yeah. I know a lot of people say that they break down and cry. I didn't see David cry. He was, just, couldn't believe it either. It was just like a shock because we both knew that we hadn't done this. And we thought that the scales of justice would be fair and that the jury would see it for what it is. But after I'm locked up, I mean, well, okay, let me just say this. They sentenced me to natural life. So you got to come back probably a month later. And my lawyer already prepped me and told me that, because there's 2 murders, it's mandatory in Illinois that you get natural life. There's no discretion by the judge. You're going to get a natural life sentence. He said, but don't let it get you down, because we're going to do this appeal. We're going to do this. The state did errors. The judge did errors, so I don't know anything about the law. I believe him. So, yeah, I go in there and I have a little bit of hope. They're saying, okay, I just got to take it on the chin, and this is what happens. Yeah, but what really, really hurt was, once again, when I was found guilty, looking over and seeing the prosecutor so jubilant over a conviction that anyone that had any ounce of a semblance of justice would say that this was fair. They knew that it was unfair from the very beginning, but yet allowed, this to go move forward and prosecute people that the case should have raised red flags. I'll give you one example. That accomplice witness that I mentioned had implicated 2 people. One was a juvenile who was in juvenile custody for a crime that he did about 15 days before the date of this crime. So he couldn't have done it. He implicated someone else who was in a coma. This guy was in the hospital in a comatose state. Not only does he implicate him, this guy gets indicted as in the county jail for a little over a month based on this false testimony. Now, I would later learn that anyone who testifies falsely or commits perjury before a grand jury, it is fatal. Now, I want to emphasize that when they say fail, that means the indictment cannot stand. If perjury is introduced into an indictment, the indictment cannot stand. Like, I didn't know about the law then. And so I would later learn that, oh, wow, we probably could have filed a simple motion to dismiss the indictment based on this individual saying that this guy was involved or that juvenile was involved, and they couldn't have been. So those should have been immediate red flags to the prosecution to say, this guy is not being truthful. They whitewash it by simply saying, when he gets on the stand, to say, I just got a little mixed up. No, that's not how justice works.
Right.
I can't come in and accuse you of something. Oh, my mistake. You weren't involved. I'm sorry. I just had your name mixed up. No.
So the paperwork, the evidence that, let's say the guy was in a coma and the other guy was in a juvenile detention, when the guy, did that come up? Like, did they had the...
Yeah, that came up at our trial. We introduced it at trial, but it wasn't enough. Once I get to the prison, after years of trying to fight for my release or a new trial or something, we spent money on attorneys. And at some point, the money gets less and less. Yeah. My father had to take out a second mortgage on the home just to pay off some of the attorneys. So I'm feeling that the brunt of that. But, any father, if you have children, if your son was locked up and he's telling you, Dad, I didn't do this, I think you would try to move a mountain for your son. Definitely. You would sacrifice. But it's painful for the individual, me, to know that my family had to sacrifice like that, just trying to do what they can to get me out. I do want to add something that, we had a really solid alibi. And the alibi was that David was at his house in Westchester with his girlfriend. I was there with my girlfriend, and my eldest sister was there with a few of her kids. And so I don't know about everybody's family dynamic, but growing up, my sister would rarely, if ever, lie for me. And for something as serious as this, she would never, never, ever go into a court and say, I was with her just to try to save me. It was the truth all along that we had this rock solid alibi that they just couldn't break. But the jury chose to look at it otherwise, mainly because the prosecution focused on gangs. This wasn't like that traditional gangbanger drive-by shooting where somebody is representing to their rivals. There's a lot of bravado out there, a lot of machismoism, where people are blatantly going to tell you we did this, and it wasn't that type of situation. It was just, like I said, juveniles that were convinced to go along with a false narrative, along with this key witness who was an accomplice witness. When I say accomplice witness, he was also charged with us because he, basically is telling on himself, saying that he drove this van that belonged to David. But I want to emphasize that no van was ever recovered. They searched the DMV records. They never recovered a van because the van was never used. I don't want to say it wasn't used. Let me be really clear on this. Dave never owned one. Dave never gave them a van. It was never his van.
Yeah.
The weapons were never recovered. There's no physical evidence. There's no forensic evidence. There's no eyewitnesses. There is only one piece of evidence that they've ever had that was really harmful to us, and that was the accomplice witness who said he was there when this conspiracy goes on. He got the keys from David, and that he drove me and another person to the park. And along the way, he says two young girls see us, and he asks, "Are there people still in the park?" And they say, "Yeah." These are the same girls that they allege made a phone call from Home Run and Pizza to David. Now, those that remember in our old school will know when I talk about Illinois Bell, that was the only telephone company. And they went and searched Telephone Bell records. They went and got the subpoena, and there was no phone call made from Home Run into David's house. So these things, again, should have been red flags.
Did that get introduced in the trial?
All this got
and
introduced. They just again, how they managed to do it was, it's really prosecution 101. Villainize the individual, and you can more than likely get a conviction.
Yeah.
Forget what the facts may be, what are the strengths or weaknesses of the evidence you have. If you can just villainize the individual, you can get a conviction. And my study showed me that is something that they do when they teach prosecutors to do. And so all they had to do was say, we were gang members. Get in there. These guys are gang members. They're sitting here with these suits on. That's not who they are. Throw some sweaters on it. Throw some colors on them. That's who they are. That type of stuff, and the jury went for it. They're like, okay, because you have to think about it. Lay people, even though they are told not to look at an individual as they're guilty, there's their presumption of innocence until the prosecution proves you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Those are basic foundations of our criminal justice system. But it gets distorted when they're allowed to overstep that and overreach. They try to personalize it. They also personalize. They said things at the closing arguments during our trial. If you want your children, if you want them walking about in a park and having to worry about being shot and them being killed, and you getting a phone call that they're killed, you're not supposed to do that. That is a no-no. That is also a violation of right. There's so many violations on top of violations. It would take probably an hour for me to explain it all, but I'll just tell you this. We did not receive a fair trial. And the really sad part of it is that our own attorneys, in particular my trial attorney, overlooked some things. He did not bring forth evidence. Like, as I indicated, they said I was a second shooter. There was evidence from the very beginning that they had 3 eyewitnesses who implicated another juvenile as doing this role, not me. They had eyewitnesses. Imagine that. 3 people saying someone else did it other than me, and my lawyer knew about it. Never called them. Any lawyer with any ounce of professionalism or a sense of being loyal to their client would break their neck to bring in eyewitnesses that
Especially
say someone else did it other than your client, but he didn't. I would later find out that he didn't do it because he was representing that juvenile. This same juvenile was charged 10 days before us. He was indicted for the same charges that we would eventually be convicted of. Yeah. And the same juvenile would later be named as a prosecution witness, which I didn't know about until years later. So
isn't that like a conflict of interest?
It's a per se conflict of interest. A per se conflict of interest is different than an actual conflict of interest. Per se is automatic. It's so embedded, so egregious that it's an automatic new trial. You don't have to show prejudice. with an actual conflict of interest by your attorney, you have to show prejudice that he didn't do such and such, he didn't perform to his duty, and then I was prejudiced by him not doing it. We didn't have to do that. Well, that's part of that, the later part of my story or our story. But anyway, here I am now in prison in the IDOC. As you can imagine, it's difficult to have to be in there knowing that you didn't do it. You know, with a natural life sentence without parole, my appeals are being denied. My first post-conviction gets denied. You know, we don't know about the law. We're contemplating trying to get some more money together, David and I. We need to do something. We had a point where we didn't have anything in the court for years. But I eventually get a job in the law library, and I began to study the law.
After how many years did
I got a job in the law library probably like in '85 after my first appeal had been totally denied, and the money I indicated was starting to dwindle, and I didn't want to put a burden on my family any longer. I started studying the law. I got a job in the law library. Now, granted, I didn't know anything about the law at that point. I'm just there. So, but I knew at that point I had to study, and you know, it was a struggle. In the '80s was both a learning process for me, but it was difficult because, like I said, the prisons were really violent. You know, I saw a lot of violence. I was exposed to violence. I seen violence that it was even came from the correctional officers, meaning there would be incidents where people were having knife fights, and they actually shot the guy down and killed them. So here I am witnessing or seeing them shoot somebody, and it's justified. This deadly force is justified because they think this person is a threat to another person, and so they shot him. It happened twice in F House and the Roundhouse. Like I tell you, that's something that remains with me to this day. You know, there's all this violence. It's a known fact that anyone that endures or experiences violence has trauma. You're going to have some PTSD. Yeah. And I know I suffer from that. I'm sure David does. Anyone that is exposed to any level of violence, you know, we're traumatized. And just the carceral experience itself is traumatizing. Some people couldn't do it. And it was a struggle. And it was also a personal spiritual struggle for me because, like I said, I grew up in a Catholic family, and I'm questioning my religion. I'm questioning my God. You know, how could a God who's supposed to be all powerful, all merciful, allow me to be continued incarcerated for a natural life sentence? Which, you know, as it began, the years passed, you know, it starts to sink in. Hey, you might not come out. This might be your destiny, but deep down, I like, no, this can't be, you know? So when I say I question my religion, I start to study. I start to get, really deep into the Word, not in the sense that I'm studying Scripture to let the Scripture resonate and touch me internally. I'm doing it with my mind, trying to say, why is it so many different versions of the Bible, NIV, you know, all these different versions of the Catholic Bible reads different. Why do they have different books in this Bible? They don't have it over here. You know, they got Baruch, they got this, they got that. And you start to say, hey, something doesn't sit right with me. So I'm digging a little deeper. That's the type of person I am. I know, get to that truth, the written truth, but I'm thinking with my mortal mind. You get it?
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out why does it go to, the Hebraic way, language that they had it, the Septuagint, to this, to that. Why is this changing over the years to Latin, to this, to that? And then words are changed. So I'm being technical.
Okay.
And I'm trying to say, well, something's not right. So I'm thinking this has to be humans that are doing this. It goes all the way to the Council of Constantine. When you see them come there and they want to eliminate some of the books, you see the Coptic or Orthodox Church saying this and that. So I'm into this really deep, and I can go on and on and on and on and on with it, with some of the words and what they mean. And I was yearning. I was yearning to find out truths. With my worldly mind, never once thinking that I have to give it to my spiritual self. I attended some services, but I'll be honest, they rang hollow with me because, like I said, I would pray. I wasn't that person that got on my knees every day, but I would say a little prayer at night and to just say, God, if you just help me get out of here. That was a constant prayer. Some might say a mantra that I would say, and I was determined. I'm like, I can't let this be my destiny to rot away in here, because a naturalized sentence is nothing more than a slow death by incarceration until you wither away, and you just represent money to the system, and they're indifferent of whether you're guilty or not. They just want that money. You're no more than data and a number that they can justify getting a fiscal budget. That's it, So anyway, I'm in the law library, and I'm beginning to understand the tenets of the law too, and that's the way my mind works. And I began to learn it more and more. I'm starting to file stuff, motions, post convictions. I'm helping individuals with appeal, and I became quite well versed with sentencing laws. And now I'm getting a lot of individuals time reductions or getting their sentences vacated. And at first, I'm known as Jimmy Soto. Go to him; he can get your sentence chopped down. So you can imagine in prison beginning to garner a reputation where you can get guys sentences cut down. They're gonna knock on your door. They're gonna break your, I need your help. And
so they're bringing you some food and some stuff, huh?
Yeah. One thing an old timer told me: never charge anybody to do the legal work, And I didn't tell somebody, give me this. It was a bit crazy, but anytime people were always willing to give me things, and sometimes it'd be somebody that didn't have a lot of money. He worked in the kitchen, and it would be like, you know what, bro? Anytime you need a tray, we hook up some. In prison, there are those that have those assignments. They might have the regular meals that they have on the line to serve everyone, and then they would have other things that they make a special meal with. It might be just simply chicken fried rice, and guys would look out for me and give me chicken fried rice for doing their legal work. And so that worked out really nice for me because so I'm eating. I don't
like a perk in there, right?
Exactly. So, I helped out a lot of individuals. Soon I began to get guys new trials. I didn't get a lot of them. Probably over my whole time, the 42 years. Well, actually, I only been really doing the law for 35, close to 36. Around May, June will be 36 years that I'm a self-taught. People say jailhouse lawyer, but I don't like that term.
Okay.
I like to describe myself as a prisoner advocate who fights for human rights. That's
good.
what I truly am, But anyway, as I get, you start to get new trials, and I'm getting post convictions that are getting in there. I win a habeas corpus for somebody who wins a new trial. So, you start to get more and more of a reputation of being able to do legal work, because I'll tell you, there's the people that say they know what they're doing. And just like me early on, I made a lot of missteps. And unfortunately, those individuals, I really lost their chances of getting any relief in the court because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I was trial and error. I think I do, but I don't. But you learn. So I learned through trial and error what landmines to avoid, what to do a comprehensive legal argument. And it's just simply, the formula isn't something magical or mystical. You just have to put in the work. The old adage, you only get out of something what you put in. And if I would take someone's legal work, I would act like it was my own. I would look at, from the very beginning, their police reports, any common law records, any pre-trial stuff, the actual trial record, and then the post-trial record, any briefs that they had filed on appeal, and then look at it all. And then I would assess, what can I do? And then it's just like anything else. Once you know what the facts are and what the possible legal ramifications or issues that apply, you have to do the research with the case law, and then you just formulate it. It's like, that would later serve me well when I get into school, and I get to that in a bit, because I've always had education at the forefront. 3 months after I was in prison, I signed up for vocational classes and got a small engine certificate with Joliet Junior College. I would later take courses with Lewis University, accredited courses. I earned 42-hour credits with them. I earned a few credits with Roosevelt University. So I also did classes with Northeastern. I came really close and good friends with the professor, Norval Morris, who would later pass away. But, it was all in my process of learning the law and being more and more proficient with it to help individuals. And I'll tell you, it was really gratifying, but it was also frustrating to me on a personal basis because I wasn't able to do it for myself.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. How did that feel?
You relish in the victories, and we're all human beings at the end of the day, and the ego feels good. But then, something inside was still empty. Something was missing. And, I didn't understand it at that point, but I just knew, why can't I do that? I mean, probably when we get into 2010, 2011, I did some interesting work where I helped one individual get his post-conviction back in. His name is Robert M. Moldovar. He eventually gets fully exonerated based on the argument that I had written out for him in his post-conviction. There was a second individual, Apprentice Nash, who I did a 116 motion, is where you want the DNA to be tested. And so he won the testing for his DNA, which later proved him to be innocent. So that was even bittersweet, and more so because if I can do this and get people to the point where they're fully exonerated, why can't I do it for myself? Yeah. But I'm in Menard now. I got shipped out of or transferred out of Stateville. I'm in Menard, which is in downstate Chester, Illinois. And, things weren't going right. My first post-conviction, which I thought I did, a rather comprehensive argument, eventually gets dismissed. It was lingering for 21 years. I had got reverse remanded, meaning it was sent back to the Circuit Court of Cook County twice. Eventually, it's denied. The Illinois Supreme Court doesn't want to hear it. And I'm back to square one. I'm in Menard. We're in a lockdown. It's hot. It's miserable. And I just knew I had to go back to square one. I wasn't working in the library at the time, so I didn't have access to a lot of the legal books. So I just sacrificed, commissary, the money that my family or the few friends, because I remember reading a book by Nelson Mandela, where he talked about two things that really touched me. And one was, he said, the number of years that you've been locked up by the number of friends that you lose. And he was a really, really pivotal person. And there were people that would contact him, like young scholars, but they weren't friends. They eventually became his friends. When he talked about friends, he's talking about friends you grew up with. And it's the same for me. As the years went by, you got less and less people who were there in your corner, who would constantly come to visit you or would send you money for that matter. Right. But I've been fortunate. My family has always been there and looked out for me. So I won't say that. So I had to save my money, and I invested well over $4,000 worth of law books, and I tell you, it was well worth it. But I'm there. I'm just like people would come by my cell and just see paper scattered, and I had these Post-its on the wall. You're not supposed to have anything on the wall in prison, but I figured if I'm going to get a disciplinary report, I'm going to get it for this. I'm setting up the web, breaking my case down step by step by step, just to really analyze it.
Did the guards maybe give you a pass knowing what you were doing? Where they were like, maybe look the other way?
They looked the other way, yeah. But I would take it down if I went to yard or something, but then I put it right back up because visually, we are unique beings in that we can encode what we learn through three main ways. One is visual, one is audio, and then the other one is, of course, you reading. What I mean by visual is like it's something that's tangible. You could see it. You pick up something. You touch a hot stove. It's hot. Not to touch the stove again. That's what I mean by that. And so, reading really helped me understand the law better. These books I just can't tell you, they were like salvation in a sense. But again, I'm not getting what I want at the time. Now I'm filing FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests for more information. And this is when I start to discover more material about the things that were so wrong with my case. Getting more police reports that I hadn't got before, getting motions that my lawyer filed and see the errors that he did, and how just sitting like, how could this be? I also had mentioned about individuals that made statements on me. And so I managed to get a few of them who they weren't, I was in contact with them. You know, as I said, there might have been a little bit of, you know, ill feelings on my part and theirs.
Right.
You know, you accuse me of being this and you really don't understand. And I hadn't forgave them, you know, really. And you know, I told you I understood, but I hadn't forgave them at that point. And so I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, you know, if these guys are going to come through. Somebody through a friend said, well, this guy such and such said, you know, what can he do to help you? Well, he could sign an affidavit. So I get 2 affidavits. And I'm thinking, okay, I got some affidavits. I got this new evidence. I need to start thinking about it. I wound up going to SEG, and I'm in SEG. And yeah, I get a letter. It's hot. I'm behind this steel door, which is these holes that they put in these metal plates. And I'm there because there's not the room, segregation is full, you know. And I'm wondering, like, once again, I cry out, you know, God, what's going on here? You know, I didn't do anything wrong. I go to SEG because my cellmate my cellie had a pen with a small piece of needle on it. And he was using it to cut cards. You know, everybody in there has to have some supplemental income, and his hustle was making cards. And yeah, they wrote him up for that. He had told him from the very beginning it was mine, but they wrote us both a disciplinary report. So I wound up going to SEG temporarily until we see the adjustment committee, those that can determine, you know, whether we get disciplinary action or not. And so we are on lockdown on top of that. And I went to go see the committee, and I was supposed to come out, but I didn't get my property because the workers weren't out. It's hot. We're in a heat wave. I got no fan. You know, if you want to describe hell on earth, when we think of it in terms of hot, this terrible, you know, heat just emanating in there, that's it. In Menard, anyone that been in Menard in the pit in the summertime during the heat wave could fully understand what I'm talking about. The walls literally sweat, you know. I didn't have a fan. I'm sitting there with a piece of styrofoam tray, the lid, trying to cool myself off, laying in a puddle of water just to fall asleep, just to have to wake up again because there's no circulation in there. So anyway, at that point, I get a letter from this intake director at Northwestern who I wrote like probably a year before and told him, you know, I was seeking legal help. And he says something about my letter stood out to him. And he had a friend who was now working for a private investigator at Tactical Solutions with this investigator, Sergio Saratella. And yeah, they'll be willing to investigate the case. David's girl Gail would eventually, you know, his ex, for the record, I want to be clear, his ex-girl, Gail, she helped too to put some money together, but also my sister was talking with the investigator, and, you know, this investigator would later get a dozen witnesses. These witnesses that I spoke about, he eventually gets all of them to sign affidavits, you know, and, you know, I'm really, really moved by that. This probably would have been around 2013, and, you know, I just like, wow. You know.
Now, are they doing all this for free, this program, or you got to pay for that?
It was part free. It was a discount. Okay. And part, we had to put some money up.
Gotcha.
Just the fact that somebody would come in and was able to do that was really.
Yeah, it's an amazing miracle almost, ain't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So these things start to come up. And then I get you know, because I'm wondering, now I got probably 30 plus years in at that time. And I'm thinking, you know, wow, you know, I'm now see that there's a little bit of a sun ray coming in this dark abyss. You know, it's like you see it some distance and like, wow, there's a chance that this could be what could help me out. And I know legally new evidence is what I need. So I then comprise my own post-conviction, and I send it out and have someone type it up. And I eventually give, David gets an attorney. I send it to them. And then I managed to garner the help of a pro bono attorney named Jennifer Blagg with this comprised, because really I could have probably filed that post conviction on my own,
Right.
as it was, because it was I'm not going to say a masterpiece, but it was
Solid.
really, really well written.
Yeah.
You know, it was on par with any attorney that could do that type of work. So with that, I start, you know, shopping around, mailing to people. So not only did Jennifer contact me, I probably had at least a good 7 attorneys call me and say that, you know, there was some interest, but she was the first one, and she took the case, and so she files my petition. So my petition doesn't get filed till 2015, you know, because she has to go through everything. She has to verify that these witnesses are saying what they say they are, you know, because any lawyer, that's just good diligence. You don't want to put something in there that could be any blowback.
Yeah.
So the petition gets filed, and Dave has his filed, and unfortunately by 2019 it gets dismissed. And so now we got to appeal it. It was a blow. It was a kick to the gut, you know. And in 2019, our petitions get denied, and so I'm like, wow, it was a blow. I wondered why did this once again. I have to deal with another rejection, and knowing that this is going to be more years that I'll have to spend in prison arguing it. So we get into 20. I want to say this too. I was in Menard. I left Stateville in 1997, and I go to Menard, and I don't leave Menard to come back to Stateville, which is in Joliet, Illinois, until 2017. And so I'm like, wow, I'm back at Stateville where I started. You know, it makes you really wonder about things in prison. When I left in 97, I went to Menard, and David winds up going out of state, and then comes back, and they put him in TAMS Correctional Center, the Supermax. And so, you know, I have very little direct, if any, communication with him. We're not really communicating at all. So he's just over there. So when I say I did that petition, I wasn't going to do it just for myself. I could never abandon Dave and leave him hanging where, you know, he would not benefit from what I had written. So that's why I said when he got an attorney, I quickly gave it to the attorney. The attorney, in fact, I communicated with his attorney for the first couple of months before they filed, and probably 6 months after they filed. And then he got another attorney who I remained in contact with all the way till 2019 when the petitions get denied. So, you know, now we got to appeal it. When I'm in Stateville, in 2018, I now see a notice that says that the Northwestern University would now be offering a degree-bearing program at Stateville. And I'm like, is this the real Northwestern? Because those that don't know about Northwestern University is a top-tier university in the country. It is at the top. It is one of the best universities in the United States. And so I see it. I said, I got to sign up.
Yeah.
You know, so I sign up, and thank God I got accepted. You know, they accepted me into the program, and you know, I'm now happy to say that I got my undergrad degree, my bachelor degree from Northwestern in November of 2023. I was the first cohort to do it. We were the first cohort in the United States to graduate from a top university. So yeah, and I graduated magna cum laude. That means, you know, top honors along with students from the actual campus. So I'm really, really proud of that as well, that, you know, I did that. Okay, so let me take you back to 2020. Now we got the appeal in, and as everybody knows, March of 2020.
Oh, right.
The world saw this invisible enemy rise from the east, from what they say is China, COVID-19. I contracted COVID probably the first month of March, and it was strange. I remember complaining to the medical staff there about the strange thing. My nerves was aching. I was cold. I was hot. I had a fever. I had chills. Stomach problems. I couldn't eat. I had no taste. And they tell me, oh, it's a stomach virus. They gave me Tylenols and about 12 Pepto-Bismol and told me to drink a lot of water. Well, needless to say, that didn't help a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I probably was sick for it took me almost a month to really start recovering. And I still have nerve problems to this day, which, is I'm not sure a lot of people have that long haul COVID symptoms.
Right.
But in prison, it was that much worse. People are leaving out. And it was a really, really difficult time in there. Now, I'm also in class, and mind you, we're studying a really, really deep text, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Greeks, the great Greeks, things. The name of the class was War and Peace. It wasn't with Tolstoy, the Russian author. This had to do with, like I said, the Greeks and all their stories. And so I'm in there studying War and Peace with the great Greek literature, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and I'm feeling so sick. I don't want to do it. I'm weak. Even after, I feel better, it's difficult for me to eat a lot. I had to eat like these liquid protein drinks Boost that my cellie had. He was a diabetic and he was on dialysis, and they gave him these drinks. And I tell you that really helped me out to be able to get the nutrition. But at that very, very low point in my life, and I start to wonder again, God, what's going on? What is it that's happening? Why am I having to suffer like this? Why do you have me in here? Why my petition? Why do I have to, seem like I take 2 steps forward and 10 steps back? Yeah. It just doesn't. It seems like a hopeless situation. So I reach out to the Exoneration Project again, and another attorney named Lauren Myerscough Mueller from there eventually agrees to take my case. The first intent was the governor of the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, had issued an executive order stating that anyone that was in the IDOC could file an emergency clemency. So we've seen 2 individuals get out from like the end of March and April. They get out of prison because of this executive order. And I'm like, wow, I got to do this. And that's why I reached out to these people, and I'm feeling like that. But let me just say this. Before Lauren comes in, it was really a turning point there for me. Because like I said, I was sick. I was at a really, really low in my life, wondering if I ever get out. And so once again, I just simply say these simple prayers. And I know a lot of people who may do prayer feel they cry out to God and expect it to happen. But I get a letter from somebody who this day I don't know who it's from. It was a P.O. box that's non-existent. And it was just a simple printout. It's not scriptural in the sense that we know the traditional scripture. And it's a story, and I'm just going to say it verbatim.
Yeah.
And the story is like this. There's a king in a faraway country whose kingdom was vast and rich. And he enjoyed going on hunting trips. So he takes his servant with him. And his servant had told him that he believed in his God. He said, my God is always right, and he's always on time. And so that was the things he said. He said, if you follow him, he's always right, he's always on time. And so the king would hear this, and he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start believing in your God. And, you say he's always right, he's always on time. And they had many good hunting outings, catching wild animals and whatnot. So they go on this one particular one. And there's this wild boar that attacks the king and bites off 2 of his fingers. And so they go back to the palace, and the king has the servant before him, all bonded up, and tells him, you told me if I follow your king that he's always right, he's always on time. How could this be right? I'm missing 2 fingers, and threw him in a dungeon, beat him, threw him in a dungeon. Okay. So a short time later, the king, who enjoyed hunting, goes out on another hunting trip. And this time they get captured by the savage tribe who does human sacrifice. And so he now has a new servant, and they look at the king, they look at his hand, and their high priest says, "Oh no, he's damaged. He's not complete. He has two fingers missing," and he doesn't kill him. Take the servant, kill the servant, offer him up. Well, the king comes back, brings the servant out of the dungeon, and tells him, "Wow, you were right. Your king was right. I got saved. If I didn't have my fingers missing, I would have been sacrificed. I would have been killed. I'm sorry." And he says, the king said, one thing I want to wonder, why is it that if your God was so great and merciful that he allowed me to throw you into the dungeon and beat you that way? He said, my king, if I had been with you, I would have been a servant sacrificed. And so that hit me, man,
That's deep.
It is. It isn't scriptural.
No, right. But yes.
But the meaning behind it is you could find it in scripture, in that sense. And I broke down, bro. I just like, man, wow, this is really what's up. And I had to look back and say, all of the people that I had helped, had I not been in prison, those people wouldn't have got new trials, sentence reductions. They wouldn't have got compensation for the constitutional violations. They wouldn't have got exonerations. So, in a sense, that's where I was supposed to be. You have to come to terms with that, because if not, then it would, what else is there?
Yeah.
So that gave me rejuvenation, the fight to say, this was my purpose, but what other purpose do I have? And so, I eventually get Lauren Myers Scott Mueller to jump in, and she gets someone else. She's doing only my clemency, my emergency clemency. And when she first reads everything that I've done over the years, I remember this vividly. We're on the phone, and she's almost in tears, telling me how wrong the conviction was, that she had never seen a case where there was just so much violations. And so she took it to her bosses and told them that she wanted to take the case all the way, meaning they would stick with me until I am out and fully exonerated. And so from that point on, she then gets someone from a firm who's named Deborah Lovey. Deb Lovey does my appeal and does a tremendous job. And she puts in there, language that's so strong and powerful, telling, basically pleading with the appellate court, telling them this is an innocent man at that time, 40 plus years. He doesn't deserve to be locked up. David eventually gets Jennifer Bonjean and her group to take his case, and now they're working on his appeal. So now our legal defense team is growing, and we eventually win. Deb does a tremendous job. I'm helping out along the way too. I want to be clear on that. I'm giving the lawyers memorandums of law. I'm giving them what I think should be an appeal, and they're really taking heed to it. They're really respecting what I'm bringing to the table. They know that I've got this body of experience that I can really, I could have probably did it on my own, to be honest, but to have them in there, to have a voice for me was, so instrumental for both of us, really, to get the appellate court to reverse the denial of our petitions. They remanded for evidentiary hearing. They recognized that we had a conflict of interest with the trial attorney, and that our claim of actual innocence had merit. It had substance. I remember there's a specific quote in there where they say that upon retrial, the outcome would be different given this evidence. So that's some powerful language to come from them.
That's coming from their side,
from the appellate court.
Yeah.
They said because it's a weak case. They said this is a weak case based on an accomplished witness who, once again, he's been impeached. His credibility, he's incentivized. There's one other point I want to make. They also discovered that this state witness had been incentivized where he was in a state witness protection quarters and he received numerous benefits, which the jury never heard. Imagine you're in a county jail where you don't get these things that I'm going to name: contact visits, direct phone calls, access to a television all day long, a convention oven, microwave oven, refrigerator, supermarket food being allowed to be brought into you, and restaurant food. So these are all the things that you want when you're incarcerated. It makes it that much more easier. But they were giving him this because they want him to be happy, and they didn't want him to flip.
Yeah.
Because he knew what he was telling them was a bold-faced lie. And like I said, I also at that point, forgave those people. I never really said those words that I forgave those young individuals who had said the things they said against us, And I'm telling you, it was really, really cathartic. It was cleansing to me. I felt relieved.
How do you feel that release happened? You said you didn't verbalize it, so how do you feel like it?
I did verbalize.
Oh, you did verbalize. Okay.
I verbalized. I said, man, I forgive them.
Okay.
I forgive those that have harmed me. I'd always read scripture. I know scripture, but I told you it's just like parroting, But there was one particular in Psalm 142, where it says, if I find you are my refuge, help me from those that persecute me, set me free from my prison, and I will praise your name. That's in 142, 7 and 8, and those words that set me free from prison, and I praise your name. Some people told me that they didn't see me or hear me say, I gave God the glory when I got out. And that was the first thing I said. But that's not a good soundbite when you go to a local media to hear somebody says, first and foremost, I want to thank God.
Yeah.
And it's better for them to say, you want to give the praise to those that are in this world. And so, without him, I realized, or I knew I would never get out of prison. And without him, I knew that I had to give him that praise, Amen. So anybody that's listening out there, no matter what, our God is always perfect. He's always on time because, that may not be scriptural, but those are my words. And that's what, and I want to say this, that God doesn't always have to come through scripture. It could come in other ways. It could come to a person. It could come to an incident. It could come in any variety of ways. But when you're touched, you're touched. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a turning point in your life, and I told you, it's cathartic. It's moving. It's like I said, I knew that we were going to get out, and I didn't know when, but I knew it would happen. And so, speed it up. We now have the appellate court order in June of 2022, and that following year, I told you I had a clemency in. So the clemency is pending until May of 2023. The governor grants me life without parole to life with parole. So it's a commutation. I now am parole eligible, and the last 4 people before me who had that same commutation got out the first time they seen the parole board. So I'm thinking, well, that's a good ace up my sleeve. But I'm still focusing on my post-conviction because we're going to have an evidentiary hearing. So beginning in June, both David and I, now David's out of state. I haven't seen him probably in well over 23, maybe 24 years. And now this is the first time I remember coming off the elevator and I hadn't seen him. When we both last seen each other, I had a full pushback fade. He had hair, and now coming off the elevator, and there he is, and we see each other. And now they had some extra security on him when he's in Cook County Jail, and I'm coming off, I'm shackled, and I didn't care. I'm like, man, what's up, Cook? We hug each other, we greet each other, we talk for a little while. His lawyer's there, who I know. I've known Jennifer Bonjean for a while. She was also my attorney on my federal habeas corpus because during that period of COVID, I was determined to get three fronts. I got the clemency going on. I got my appeal then going on, and then with my post conviction, and then I have my federal habeas corpus, which I had on a hold. I now lifted that hold, and Jennifer Bonjean took my case to fight my habeas corpus. There's one thing I didn't mention. Our jury did not receive a formal instruction on the presumption of innocent and reasonable doubt. You heard me say that's a basic tenet, foundation of our justice system. So imagine a jury not getting that. There's a really nice quote from a federal case that says, to have a jury not instructed, properly instructed, is like having them a sea without an oar or a rudder.
Yeah.
So they're just drifting. They don't have the proper guidance. How could I ever get a fair trial if my jury is not properly instructed on that? Now, presumption of innocence, they can use harmless error. In other words, to weigh the strengths or weaknesses of the evidence along with this constitutional violation. But reasonable doubt is structural error. The failure to give a formal instruction is a structural error. And a structural error requires a new trial automatically. And so that's why she took the case. She's my federal habeas corpus, she takes it and she's like, I've never seen anything like this. And I had already done a lot of the research, and she's like, you did a really good job. So she didn't have to do much work. Right. And I told her that I would help her do an amendment to it. And I did. And so it just solidified in her eyes that I could do legal work. And it made it that much more simple. So when she takes David's case on appeal, and I'm helping her outline a memorandum of law for his appeal, she's like, okay, yeah. She used a lot of it, and she gave me some compliments. We might have butted heads a few times, but it worked out really well. Anyway, here it is. I got this clemency. I'm going to court now. I see David. Now we're going to court every 2 weeks for the next almost 6 months, all the way leading up to December. But I'm telling you, at those points, I'm going to court. You spend all day shackled up, 10 to 12 hours, going, for me anyway, going from Stateville to the Cook County Jail, waiting. It's just a long process, and I had to do it, like I said, 9 times. And every time they would tell me, the next time you're coming out, the next time. And next time didn't come. And I'm wondering, like, when is it going to come, And again, now I feel like I have this closeness to God. And so, I remember that in the New Testament it says the most powerful prayer is the one done in silence. Don't be like the religious leaders trying to flaunt yourself. And I don't knock that if somebody does open prayer. I mean, fellowship has its purpose. But again, that silent prayer is the most powerful prayer, because that's what they say. And you don't only find that in Christianity, you find it in other religions as well, that there's silent prayer. So, to say a little silent prayer in the morning, during the day, and then at night, asking them, what you want. And, like they say, you believe, pray, believe, and wait, right? And so that's what I did. And, the time came, like in November, I want to say this, I graduated from Northwestern. They had a really, really good ceremony. There was a lot of media there. I got interviewed a few times. We have Ta-Nehisi Coates. Those that don't know.
Is this why you're in the county?
This is when I'm in Stateville.
Oh, Stateville. Okay.
Yeah. I get my bachelor's in science and social studies from Northwestern University. And I got my diploma, which states I graduated magna cum laude, signed by the provost of the university, Miss Garrity. There was a lot of dignitaries there. The lieutenant governor, Ta-Nehisi Coates. Those that don't know it, he wrote a really number of books. He's an accomplished author. He came there and he was just blown away by us. It was a really, really good experience, and it was like a sense of freedom. I believe that education is liberation, and I also believe that mass education can combat mass incarceration, not only in an academic level, but educating people about what prisons is like, because getting out was great. It was a wonderful experience. It was exhilarating, but uh, you have to. It was the conditions. Those 42 years, because I'm often asked and by a lot of people, 42 years, how was it? It's the conditions. I only did my time in maximum facilities, and being at Stateville under those conditions, toxic water, black mold, roach, mice infestation, uh, compromised infrastructure that's fallen apart, bad plumbing and electrical outlets that go out. It's just just a really really bad, depressing place. And yeah, one of the things I hadn't seen in years, and I didn't realize it until I was things were looking really up for me. I hadn't seen the sunrise in almost 20 years. Everywhere that I was housed or placed in a cell, it was always where the sun was setting, and or where I don't see the no sun at all, where I wasn't around a window with natural lighting. So one of the first things I wanted to do was go to the lakefront and see the sunrise, because I hadn't seen a sunrise, and that was also really really moving to know that I'm out. I'm breathing this fresh air along the lakefront. It was a warm. It was on December 15th, and it was a warm morning. And I tell you, that really having it set in for me that I was out. I was physically free, but more so I was spiritually free. I told you that that it took a long time, because I even questioned the existence of God. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
I think that's a normal reaction to somebody who's looking and yearning and wanting something to happen, and it doesn't happen. But like I said, His timing is perfect. That was the time when me or David and I were meant to come out.
Yeah.
And I'll say this much: my post-carceral experience is something that I saw. I'm looking back, and what I've done. I've only been out a little more than 2.5 months, and I volunteer at the Pritzker School of Law with Professor Sheila Betty, where we work on civil litigation. I'm there twice a week. I'm a Justice Fellows with the University of Chicago, where I work with the Center for the Studies of Race, Politics, and Culture, and I'm in an extended program there, which is Beyond Prisons, where we think about how we can bring humanity back to the way people view prisoners. The other thing I do is I work at Northwestern University with Professor Jennifer Lackey, who is the director of the Northwestern Prison Education Program, which I graduated through that program with. They gave us a free degree, and to anyone who questions why they should educate a person who's locked up with natural life, don't only look at my example, but think about this. Everybody's not going to be locked up forever. I'm personally fighting for parole to come back to Illinois. I'm a part of Parole Illinois. Those that might be interested, go to paroleillinois.org. We're trying to bring a re-entry bill back in. We're trying to build momentum. We're trying to mobilize to make that happen, because I'm not saying let everybody out of prison.
Right.
In fact, it may sound kind of strange. There are some individuals that probably don't deserve to get out here. There's just some people that have underlying psychological problems that would be harmful to others and themselves. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that people are deserving to be at least reviewed. We are a country that's supposed to be one of second chances.
Yeah.
And if somebody shows rehabilitation, there should be a group of individuals that are have the ability to evaluate whether or not they sincerely show their rehabilitation. And it shouldn't take that, all these decades. I'm not saying that, everyone is going to get out, because I want to emphasize that, because a lot of people think that that's what it's all about, and it's not. It's just a matter that it makes sense,
Yeah.
And those of you that have a Christian-centric ideology, you have to forgive. And I wonder, and I put that out there, what would Christ do? What would Jesus do to individuals that were accused of murder? Look to who was on his left and right on the cross. Look at that, what he said.
Yeah.
He forgave
Yeah.
the robber. He forgave the sinner. So who are we to say we are any less than that or
Yeah.
greater than that? You get what I'm saying? So
No, definitely. You know what comes to my mind? I know this is like going off topic. The movie Scarface. You remember? I don't know if you ever seen
I've
it.
seen
Okay, where he goes into the restaurant and he starts going on a rant like you need people like me so you could point. That's the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times you're going back to the Christ centric as Christians. A lot of times we view some sin as graver than others. But in the Bible, it says that if you've broken one commandment, you've broken them all.
That's
and,
true.
And a lot of times, like you say, a lot of people look, for instance, at somebody behind bars. Oh, they're animals, man. They're criminals. They deserve to be in there. Man, we deserve God's wrath just for our lying, for our thinking, you know. So, and now let me ask you this. I know you say you want to bring parole back to Illinois. Now, you mean for those that are basically like life without parole?
No,
Because there's other people that are eligible or no?
no, there's no parole.
There's no parole at all?
There's been no parole in Illinois since 1978. They have truth in sentencing or 85%.
Gotcha.
Or 50% sentences. But once you serve it, you're out on MSR, which is mandatory supervisor release. I'm saying that they should have universal parole, everybody parole eligible, depending what their offense is.
Yeah.
They would be allowed to have early release. That's why the bill is titled Earned Early Release. You have to earn it. It's not given to you. You have to show that you've checked some of these boxes, and then you'll be eligible to be reviewed by the PRB, the Parole or the Prisoner Review Board. And yeah, I'm just saying that, you know, no matter how you look at it, it's something that we need to come back with Illinois. It would not only that, it would save money. If you right now, they just passed the budget for the IDOC. Well, they're talking about it with the fiscal budget for the state of Illinois. And once again, public safety or money that they're going to allocate for the Illinois Department of Corrections is approximately $1.4 billion. It is right up there with public education. And, you know, this is one of the highest budgets that we have in our state. And one has to question, why are we pouring all that money into incarceration, but we don't see things changing? The basis of such thinking, of having long-term incarceration, is deterrence. It's squarely on deterrence. And this is something that's a fallacy. No one who's going to commit a crime is going to say, oh, I'm worried about getting X amount of long-term sentences before I commit the crime. It's shown that deterrence does not work. So why do we still continue to throw money that way and thinking that it does? You know, this is like backward thinking. And I would say to those fiscal conservatives, you know, why spend that money? The money could be well spent at the front end, or it could be spent to help prepare. You know, I'm a restorative justice practitioner. That's the other thing I do besides everything else. Like I told you, I work at Northwestern University. I work with a project where we are looking at reparations to people who were in custody and illegally made illegal confessions. Like I said, the techniques that they used makes an individual lose their agency. You don't have the wherewithal. Once you're in that locked room with law enforcement, they now take your very personhood and they force you to confess. And so that's something I feel real strongly about, and I'm happy to be working, putting research together that will eventually become an academic paper and a book for Professor Jennifer Lackey, who's the director of the NPEP, you know. And yeah, I mean, I also work with restorative justice. I'm a restorative justice group at the Pritzker School of Law on Fridays. So my week is pretty full, and I go to a lot of events and I talk to a lot of people. And, you know, there's something in the society that's missing, like it was missing with me. And and I think it's squarely with people not really treating people like people. I mean, we are really at a point in our society where we have our technological devices and we depend on them so much. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, having my own cell phone is just, great. I mean, you have instant communication. Right. You can order food. You can do so much with it. But at the same time, it's so distracting that people are so self-involved with their devices that we're not really communicating at a human level. And I think that lack of a communication amongst ourselves has caused us to be indifferent to a lot of these issues that have been existing. And we want to complain about, these oppressive systems that exist, but we're not really doing anything to really prevent them. And that's why I said the money that they're spending to incarcerate can very well be taken away. You let out those that have shown rehabilitation, and because there's a lot of good reentry programs that are around. I see that, but what good are they if you don't have people returning and getting out of prison? You're taking only one or two individuals, three that you help, and that's great. But there's so many more deserving, and I just think they deserve to be let out, because I was there. I was in the trenches with them. It's no different if I would be with you for a decade. I would know you. We spend so much time together, and I would say, like, you know what, they need to Omar. He's a good individual who I would vouch for to get out, and that's what I'm talking about. As many people that I put my name on, I'm not going to just do it for everybody.
Right.
But if I say that, and I would hope that my name, my word would carry a little bit of weight, because I want to try to make myself available to those people and help them find pathways out. But the long-term goal, I'm going to be going to law school. I'm going to take the LSAT. Again, I took it once while in prison, and it wasn't the score I wanted, but I was going to court. I had a lot of things going on, and, the
LSAT as well. What is that?
The LSAT is the legal SATs, where you have to take the test to determine whether or not you have the aptitude to get in law school.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know if it's a true measure of whether or not you'll be a good lawyer, but it's just the way the system is set up. And so I have to take the test again to try to bring up my score. Once I do that, I will be applying to law schools, preferably getting in Northwestern and going to Northwestern to get my Juris Doctorate, my JD, my law degree. And I want to be able to help, a Jimmy Soto, a David Ayala, etc., those that have been wrongfully convicted. I can't say with any, 100% certainty that the individuals that I help are 100% innocent, but I do know there are a lot of people in the system that I believe are wrongfully convicted, particularly in Illinois. I will tell you this, and maybe it's conservative, but I think about 25% of the overall body of those that are incarcerated in the IDOC are wrongfully convicted, and they deserve to have their proverbial day in court. And I want to be an individual to help some of them, because a lot of these programs, they can only take so many cases. So that means those that haven't been able to discover material like I was able to, or to get a witness like I was able to, or to do any of the things that I was able to, and they can't come to the table. Because if you don't have something tangible, you're not bringing something to an attorney. That's what they want to see. They want to see something. If you're just saying verbally, "Oh, I'm innocent," it's not gonna. Yeah, okay, I hear it all the time. I get, but if you're now coming with something, and I want to be the person that to really dig in and really see if there's an individual who's who touches me with a letter, and and I'm gonna help them, women and men, whoever it may be, and fight for them and get some more of them out of there, because I think it happens so frequently. The only reason why David and I had gotten a lot of media attention was we were the longest serving individuals who were released and exonerated. Well, that's not a title we set out to get.
No, right.
Nobody wants to be the longest serving individual who gets released and exonerated. They want to be, I would have loved to have been out the first 5 years, but be that as it may, there's going to be another one. There's going to be somebody that breaks that record. And but we hear so often, like in the month leading up to David and I getting out, there was 4 people that got out, and I can't say their names exactly, but I think it was Benitez and Brian Beals come to mind. And Benitez served like 35. I think Brian served 38. There was another one before that, 28, and then one after these individuals that served like 28 or 27. And society looks at it like indifferently, like, okay, it's another wrongful conviction.
Right.
Like it's an expected norm. No, there should be some outrage about this. There should be people saying, what is going on in our system, that people have to spend decades who were wrongfully convicted and were innocent. Each and every one of these cases should be an outrage. People should be demanding that we look at the system overall, and then we try to figure out a way, like forming a statewide commission or something that's going to review these cases when someone says or makes a claim that they're innocent, that there'll be expedient review of them and that they can get out. Because there shouldn't be another person who spends 3-4 decades in prison having to struggle to get out.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, I was going to ask you, before you got out, did you have any, like, I know you're working towards that to get your degree to help them. Were there any guys that maybe were, like, under your wing that you were, like, training, maybe, like, in a sense to take over, not your spot, but, you know, like, what you were doing in there for the guys? Were
You're talking about the legal work?
Yeah, the legal work, like other guys that maybe...
There was some that I was working with, but you got to bear in mind that when I was accepted into the Northwestern Prison Education Program, that's full time. I mean, we didn't have any breaks. We went to school year round. Summertime didn't matter. So being in a program like that with the standards that they have, because people might say, "Oh yeah, they're gonna water it down. These are just people who've been convicted. Some of them didn't have the best education, so we're gonna dumb it down." No. I want people to know that this was a legit degree, and we had to earn it, and we were doing writing text. The prison has had a policy probably for the last 20 years or so where you're only allowed to have a pencil or a pen that's no more than 3 inches. So that's what we had to write with. We didn't have laptop computers. We had to sit there, and oftentimes I told you about the deplorable conditions at Stateville. Not every cell has a desk and a stool, a chair. So you have no desk or chair. You got to sit on your little property box, which is like a 3 by 1.5 foot little box that you sit on. You got to flip it over and sit there, put maybe your pillow on top of it and write. Or you use your toilet as a seat and you sit there and write. So it's stressful on your neck, your back, your arm, your hand. And that's how I'm writing papers, and I'm producing, not only me, it's anyone that's involved in that program. They're producing top quality papers. We're getting good grades. And not everybody, but, for the most part, people are putting in the work. And it goes back to what I told you. Only get out of something what you put in. So we're grinding. I didn't have the time to take someone under my tutelage and train them for the law. But I have other individuals that I did train in the past who have taken off and blossomed. But I just don't think, because of the years of experience, there's very few people that have done it for that long and to have that reputation of being a prisoner advocate. Because I believe that, on a human rights basis, everybody's deserving to have review throughout. There should be a constant way for them to be able to challenge their convictions. What happened at the federal and state level in Illinois, particularly, is that you only have limited time. Like, in other words, 3.5 years after your direct appeal, your first appeal, to put your first post-conviction in. That time flies by. People think, oh yeah, well, no, it's 3.5 years after that. So you got to imagine some of that time is eaten up by you actually filing your first appeal, actually filing your first petition to the Illinois Supreme Court. So that leaves you maybe 6 months after your petition before the Illinois Supreme Court is done to file your post conviction. Flies by. Many individuals are locked up because they simply miss deadlines. So they're procedurally barred to bring those claims. And that's a bigger problem than I'm ready to address at this time, but it's a real problem. Yeah. So, fortunately, we didn't have a lot of those problems procedurally, but they exist. And, I feel for that. I feel for anyone that has to go through that because I've seen it. I'm there. I was living it. And, I could go on and on about the ills of the system, but I will say this, that, those that, stay focused and just got to believe, pray, believe, and wait. I mean, because it can happen. If I'm could show anybody anything that it's not only in the prison sense, but it's in life. You gotta just hold to it. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to end with saying, that God's time is always perfect. He's there. He's not going to abandon you, although it feels that way at times. He's always right. It's the timing is right, man. I came out and I've done these things. I mean, I know people that have been out years have done a fraction of what I've been doing, and so and I can say this: David as well is now moving in the direction of doing speaking, motivational speaking, and I think that might be his calling. I know that for me, it's going there and giving it. And I don't like to use the term testimonial, but it is testimonial in nature when I go speak, because oftentimes I'm speaking to academic audience, and a lot of them are either unbelievers or they are not looking at for what it is. So I think that's where my niche is at, to bring a message of hope, a message of saying, we have to reimagine and think another way. And if you allow yourself to do that, things can come to fruition, and you're going to be able to invoke the change that you want, not only in your personal life, but in the more macro level in a societal way. Because, I think our society is like I said, lacking that human element. And once you dehumanize individuals, not because you're doing it purposely, we've been so tethered to these devices that, we've lost scope. And that's what I see. I'm not one to judge, but I just hope that people can see that there's a need for change. There's a need for change. And we got to start moving that way.
Okay, no, thanks for sharing all that. Now, I know there's a whole bunch of stuff that you see that needs to be changed, but in the last, few years, do you feel that they're at least taking strides, maybe even if it's gradually, to change some of the things, like in the
in the prison, or
no, you're just like in the system, I guess. Do you feel like they're actually I know a lot of people are. No, you don't feel like they're making.
I don't feel like they're doing change in the sense that you're seeing that. The only thing I would say is this: okay, yes, there is in the secondary education, higher education now is there, and I know that NPEP's going to be there. I know that PNAP, which is another group that I was involved with. They also teach. It's called the Prison Neighborhood Arts Project, and it's a coalition of instructors and professors from Northeastern and DePaul, UIC, U of C, and NIU. They come in and they teach. That's another program. So yes, in that sense, higher education programs are now being more readily available for people in the IDOC. And I think that, like I told you, that mass education can combat mass incarceration, because then you can show who you are. I told you that I put all that work, the rigorous studies and writing that I had to do to earn my degree. There's other individuals that are doing it. There's another Jimmy Soto struggling and fighting to get that degree. And it doesn't have to be the program I graduated from. So I do see that. And once you become more conscious and aware, on these academic level, it opens up your mind, you expand, But if you just let that holistic, not, holistic, but I would just say this spiritual level, if you allow that to come in and coupled with your academic learning, well, it's transformative. It's transformative in a way that, and transcending in a way that would actually make individuals who could come out here and make that difference, that change I spoke about.
Yeah.
You know, because there has to be a meeting of those that were incarcerated and those that are out here, so they could see it. We share similar stories, but we try to have that divisiveness to label someone and have them permanently punished by putting a label on them.
Yeah.
And you know, I say it again. You know, you have to, if you are a person who believes in God, then you have to say, what would God do? What would Christ do? You know, and that's something that's a very simple thing, and you hear it all the time. You know,
Right.
but you know, just do that. Take a second and say, you know what? What would Christ do? Would he be one to label someone as permanently a sinner, a person who's permanently a murderer? And I know that murder is one of the most heinous acts that anyone could do to anybody, and it happens. But we're not digging to the bigger question of why it happens. Why is someone finding the only way they could resolve conflict or resolve something to pick up a gun and then shoot it at another individual to take their life? It's just, you know, this is something that was put, it goes way back. It goes way back when people were colonized, when you had these European colonists come in, that came in to have you have self-hate to people of color, brown and black people, and yeah, to hate each other. You hate yourself, you hate each other. And they have it in a way right now where the streets have availability of handguns and people use them to harm others. And like I said, I'm a restorative justice practitioner, and I think that, you know, if the person that does it, he's traumatized. Every single person, I will guarantee you, who does acts like that, if they're not high out of their mind or drunk, it's because they're traumatized, bro. They've endured seeing violence at a young age or having something done to them, and then they commit the act. They're poorly educated in these areas, and this is the result. And then we wanna crucify them, for lack of a better way to describe it, because they did these heinous acts. And I'm not trying to say sugarcoat it. Those are wrong. They should never have done it. Every life is precious. Every life matters. But at the same time, no one is asking the question, how are they getting these guns? Yeah. You know, and then why are they doing it in that way? It's something that's learned behavior. It's learned behavior. And yeah, I mean, something got to change, man, because there shouldn't be so many black and brown bodies that we lose year in, year out in urban cities like Chicago and in northern Illinois or anywhere. But, you know, the availability of guns is really one of the problems. Then the second thing is how people have been, you know, indoctrinated to react to situations. You know, we are reactionary, and the first thing that a young person wants to do is pick up a gun because it become a gun culture. But how did we get there? Yeah. And then how do we undo that? You know, so these are bigger questions, and these are things that I sit back and observe and profound. But yeah, I do see change within the prison for education. You know, there is also a change with more religious programs coming in, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Buddhist, whether it's Christian. You do see more volunteers coming to Stateville. I don't know if it's like that across the state. Some guys say there are some programs in other prisons, but I know Stateville in particular, it being such a dire place, does still have that rose coming through the concrete, you know, that because you see these religious things coming up. So they do have a lot of programming with that. So it is becoming that. I will say that the only change I see in there is through academic and religious programming.
Okay, man, brother, man, you shared a lot, and thank you for shedding light. Basically, you're the first one that shed like that side of the prison system. You know what I'm saying? I guess like the law side and everything that happens. Not for real, and it's been very, to me, enlightening. You know, I've learned a lot from listening to you. So, man, thank you for taking the time to join us. Any final words? Anything we didn't touch on? that you wanted to share before we get ready to wrap up?
I just want to say this, it's a difficult process trying to put your life back together. I like to describe it as saying that, you take a glass vessel, and you throw it on the ground. It's broken up into 1,000 pieces. And then you try to glue it together. It's never going to be glued quite the same way. There might be some pieces missing. And that's how I'm feeling. I'm putting my life back together, and I got these holes. And it's in my mental mind because I think I'm spiritually whole. But emotionally, I have problems, as one could imagine, 42 years in an abnormal setting. And, also mentally, I am seeking therapy. And I would say anyone that's been on there decades, please go see therapy. And people should try to offer it to them because that's one of the main reasons why people reoffend. They get out there and they don't know how to cope. They don't have the coping skills. And it's just, I want people to understand that, they may see David and I, and we might be smiling, or they might see us enjoying ourselves. But inside, it's a very difficult process transitioning back to society. And, it's really hard. But, financially as well. I mean, I do these little jobs and I get these little bit of pay. I'm going to go today to a project, a university, Governor State, to do something. You just got to struggle to try to do that. So anybody that can offer assistance to David or myself, particularly Dave, I know that Omar is going to let people know on his website, it's not that we're begging for us to give money, but, just imagine yourself in that place. And I'll say, just think about, that person who had to endure all that, it's time for healing, man. That's all it really is. We're asking for a little help in healing and being able to heal others. That's a goal that we both share, David and I, is to help others who may be at risk to doing some of these acts I talked about with gun violence, and then at the front end, and then people on the back end that had to serve time and come out, is helping them out. So it's the full spectrum, you get it, that we want to do. And so, anything that you see us doing, we would ask that people support it. That's all I ask.
Okay, no, for sure. And I know you mentioned like David Ayala's, when we did the podcast, I put a link already under. It's a GoFundMe link. You could find it, I believe, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It'll be in the show notes. You guys could click on there and donate. It's on the YouTube video as well. I put it on there. And I'll definitely, if you have one, I'll throw it on there when I release this.
Okay.
I'll put it on the video. I'll put it on the audio. So they'll definitely be able to click on there. And usually I do this, brother. I know, like we mentioned earlier, about the silent prayer, but I always ask my guests if they could close us out in the prayer. So I'll give you that option. I don't know if you're willing to do it.
I have no problem with that. All right. So we'll close it out with this, man. I'll just say, all right, I thank you, Lord, for giving me this opportunity to let my voice be heard, to be a voice for the voiceless, of those that are incarcerated, those who are came out, who were exonerated and are struggling. And I know that in our world we are struggling, and I hope that you give people the ability to hear and open up their ears and be listeners. Because after all, in the book of James, it says, be doers of the word, not just hearers. But I'm asking now that you just listen to my voice, to David's voice, to Omar, and all of Omar's guests. And I'm blessed to be out here now. And I would just want everyone to know that our God is always, he's always perfect. His timing is always right, So just bear that in mind, and I'll leave you with that. And let's give glory to God. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, brother, for your time. And with that, we're gonna get ready to wrap up. Thank you guys for joining us on another episode of Wrong to Strong Chicago. Matthew 4:16 reads, "The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and upon those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned." Alongside Jimmy Soto, I'm Omar Calvillo. We are Wrong to Strong.